right, guys, how we doing? Welcome to Coffee with the Pastors. We are live. I'm Pastor Joe.
I'm Pastor Cliff.
Pastor Mark.
And we're happy to be coming to you today. Mark and I just got home from a mission trip to Northern Ireland, and London. So we're coming to you from the Olympic Stadium in London, where the Cardinals beat the Cubs 7-5.
Yes.
Just want to point that out.
Yeah.
We are in Studio 44. This is the Henry Aaron studio in honor of Mr. Aaron himself, and the greatest player ever to play the game. Mm-hmm. And of course, we are sponsored by the Beautiful Gate. Cliff, tell them about the Beautiful Gate, and maybe Whitey, you've only been there a couple times, you can chime in.
Okay.
Yeah. What was your first impression about the Beautiful Gate today?
Well, it's just, I guess it's the simplicity of it and the genuineness of it, the authenticity. Just serving God with the way He's enabled you, equipped you, from the heart, I think is what struck me the most, yeah.
Yeah, and it's that kind of a place. You go in, you relax. You can either have a Bible study there personally. They have a back room, the Spanish room, that the people come in. There's all kind of good food. There's the triple pig sandwich. Go in and order triple pig and just see what happens there. It's just the atmosphere. But then when you look at the fact that every month Corey pumps $1,500 into some mission somewhere across the world. Yeah. In fact, that was the heart of why she went into the restaurant business. And so God is blessing it. It's been now today was 2 years. We celebrated. Go in, speak to Corey. She'd be glad to see you. Brianna, her sidekick, is there. Brianna's the one that actually makes the sandwiches.
Good sandwich.
But you want to get on the good side with her. They're our sponsor every week, and we're just glad to have them aboard.
Absolutely. And just Corey and Brianna just got back. They had a trip in Mexico. Mm-hmm. They were doing street evangelism, working in our orphanages, but evangelizing on the streets of Mexico. These girls are fearless. Took a team of 9 down to Mexico City. So they're living it, they're talking it, they're giving it. It's the real deal. So
and Brianna is 16 years old.
She's 16 and Corey's 26. Yeah, 2 young ladies.
Yeah, Brandon impressed me with this. What Corey said about her. They're sharing with the kids on the street. Helping them.
Right.
Taking those youngsters in, befriending them. That's cool to see that from somebody so young.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, we're rolling on. I thought last week, if you watched, if you didn't, you can go back, was probably one of my best episodes. So go back and watch Psalm 22 from last week. But we're moving on to Psalm 23. Yeah. And you probably think you know Psalm 23, but I had a professor in college, Mr. McCaslin, who said to us, boys, you can learn the words of Psalm 23, but you won't understand the meaning until you grow up. And I think what we found is there's no bottom to this text. Yeah. There's so much in this. So if you don't know it, it's easy. Why don't you just read the text, and then Cliff, you start us off.
All right, here we go.
Can you see it?
I can.
All right, he's a lot older.
I got it, thanks. The Lord is my shepherd, I lack nothing. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. He refreshes my soul. He guides me along the right paths for His name's sake. And even though I walk through the darkest valley, I will fear no evil, for You are with me. Your rod and Your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely Your goodness and love will follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever.
This psalm reflects not a shallow attitude, but a lifetime.
Yeah.
David, no doubt, began to think about this psalm when he was a shepherd boy. I've heard people say that he was just a young kid sitting out and he wrote this psalm. That could be, but I think that he wrote this psalm later in life. Because when you look at it, he's coming from a perspective of past, present, and future.
Yes.
And it comes from an experience in the past to what's happening in his life now, and the assurance that how God has dealt with him in the past, in the present, is how God will deal with him in the future.
Yeah.
And all of that gives an underlying confidence that will help you face life from the valley of the shadow of death to your enemies, to your hunger, your thirsting, all of these things. No matter what it is in life, God is there. And from a standpoint of remembering His blessing, remembering His presence,
Yeah.
that's where I think this psalm really opens up, and from there it's limitless.
Right.
Well, let me throw this in because I want to set Mark up here. We were in Galway on the far western side of Ireland, where a solid church has been planted. One of the few churches in Ireland at all.
Yeah.
It's really hard to fathom. Northern Ireland has quite a few churches. They're struggling. They need reviving. We're working on that. But in Ireland itself, it's desolate. 70 cities of 30,000 or more that have no gospel witness at all. I mean, we're doing better than that in Islamic countries. It's really crazy. And of course, the gospel was there in the 5th century when Patrick brought the gospel there. But there really aren't even any church buildings left. It's really a desolate place. And that's where we went to plant churches. And the theme that the church has chosen in Galway to plant all these other churches is that we need to redig the ancient wells.
Like that.
So why do you fire away, brother?
Well, that's a good theme, and they brought it to us often. I also like what Gary said about, well, you're preaching through Genesis here,
Yes.
and you're, I think, coming up, or have you touched it already?
This weekend.
This weekend, Jacob wrestling with God, walking with a limp, because we're all broken. And Gary really brought that out, didn't he,
Yeah.
Joe? To his heart for Ireland, for his fellow countrymen, and that's exactly what they're doing. There was life there at one time. And now, like you say, the churches are empty, and they're either museums or some.
Well,
storefronts.
Ireland was the sending country.
That's why we're here doing this,
exactly.
right? Because of the people who came from there to.
If you didn't know, without Ireland and Scotland sharing the gospel and sending out church planters, none of us would be here.
Exactly. So that's exactly what they're doing, reaching into the past and reclaiming that, trusting God to give new life to that, because it is so very much needed there in that place. Yeah. But look here, you mentioned David's past, what's happening in his life now. If we look at David and other Bible characters that we lift them up as heroes, and they are to us, but David's life was a mess, right? He's a bad husband, he's a bad father, he's a bad king some of the times, and yet he's always called him after God's own heart, because and this describes that, because the past has been difficult for David, and maybe the day he wrote this, uncertainty and anxiety around him, and he also looks to the future he has the word of God that he trusts, that God's going to do what he said he's going to do. He has that faith in that, and that's what keeps him.
Basically has to draw on his faith to increase his faith.
Yes.
So the foundation has been poured. Sometimes, I'll just step up, sometime in my life, I won't realize I faced a similar situation until afterwards. But I didn't face it very well.
Right.
There was a lack of faith. What am I going to do? And I began to go into the woe and me, rather than just actively in my life realizing that no matter where I am, whether I've been there or not, God is already there.
Yes.
And He's there to pick us up, and God doesn't change.
No.
So He is there to deliver us from whatever's going on.
Well, I want to just throw this part in just to stretch you a little bit. I didn't have any idea of this until 4 or 5 years ago, but it proves what Mr. McCaslin told us 40-some years ago, that this is also a messianic psalm. I know last week was Psalm 22. I mean, that thing is so loaded with, literally every verse is a messianic story, but so is this. When it talks about going through the valley of the shadow of death, yes, David did it. when he was fleeing from Absalom. But it's the same valley. It's the Kidron Valley, which is where everybody is buried, from righteous Abel to Zechariah. The prophets are all buried in one valley on the east side of Jerusalem. And it's that valley that Jesus has to go from the Mount of Olives into Jerusalem. So when David is penning these words, whether he knows it or not, I don't know, but he's describing Jesus' journey. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, he had to go through that valley, and then he came out on the other side. And that's the beautiful thing about a valley. It's not a box canyon.
Exactly. Exactly. Well, again, the two ways that looks at this challenges our faith.
Yes.
I like the latter part. You said you like the latter. I'll let you pass this on to you later. But I learned many years ago that word dwell is something different than the word stay. Now, I don't know exactly the Hebrew word, but there are passages that talks about staying here. Staying is temporary.
Yeah.
It denotes temporariness. When you say dwell, it simply means I'm going to go on living where I'm at.
Yeah.
In the presence of God, that noted not just a temple. I mean, that's what Jerusalem looked for. That was the city of God. It was the home of God. The temple was the presence of God.
Yes.
That's what it looked at. David is saying, I'm just going to live in the presence of God wherever he is and wherever I am.
Yes.
And we sometimes forget there's nowhere we can go and be out of that presence.
That's right.
We're not going to go somewhere that God doesn't know where we are, know what we're doing, and many times making a way for us when there is no way.
Yeah. Oftentimes, I'll speak for myself once again. From the Old Testament, we had atonement, the sacrificial system. For a long time, I had a hard time putting that together with the purity of it, the way in which they looked at it. Because we look back at the cross,
Right.
and we have an advantage.
Right.
They only could look forward to the cross. David's assurance of salvation, not only here, what you touched on, Cliff, dwell in the presence of the Lord. Well, he's looking for eternity, but he's also looking, like you said, day to day, just walking in God's
Right.
presence. But remember when his son dies, the statement he makes that just rings so true with me is, remember his servants are puzzled why he's fasting when they, usually do that after the son dies, but he did it before. And remember what he said? He says, I can't bring my son back. This is widely paraphrased, but I can go to him. That assurance of salvation was clear to David, and he trusted that. And I really appreciate that because, listen, we all need that assurance, that reminder. Yeah, we read it often and we talk about it, but when it's here, as opposed to just here, that assurance of salvation, what God has done for us, provided by His Son Jesus, that assurance carries us through. That brings the hope, right?
Yeah.
That we have. And David was just
Well,
spot on with
and you
that.
see, just a side note here, but we went through the COVID situation,
Right.
it really revealed, and I'm not saying this to make anybody feel bad if you're a Christian, and I'm just making a generalized statement. It was amazing how many people were afraid of dying.
Yes.
Now listen, I'm not rooting to die today, but to go around afraid to die, listen, the early Christians and the people today that are sold out, don't you think they're risking everything? Because they're not afraid to die. If you're afraid to die, you're never going to live. When you know you're going to live forever, you don't have to be afraid to die.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You should write that down. Somebody
That's
should.
a good
That was
stuff.
a great statement.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'll go
He
down.
stole it somewhere.
I
That'll
know.
go down in
I better
history.
quit right now.
Well, and I've said this, but I'm serious when I do say it. I'm not afraid to die. I'm afraid how I might die.
Yeah.
But there's a big difference, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of ways I don't want to go out, but afraid of dying. What David says, "For me to live is Christ, to die is gain." Or Paul rather, to die is gain. Thank you for correcting me. Yeah, to die is gain.
Right.
That's not being afraid to die.
No,
That's-
you can't. And again, I'm not saying we do anything stupid, but
Right.
but we're called to live for Christ, and whatever that means, the goal is to go out wide open.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Well, the thing is, the word assurance is something that people lack today. You can't look at anything in the world and say, I am assured that tomorrow this will be the same way.
Right.
I mean, let me rant a minute. Last week in a parade, you had naked men walking down the streets of New York. Nobody arrested them. Nobody said anything. it was like that is a common occurrence. That's not a common occurrence. How do you get through life when you're faced this every day? The assurance is, number one, you can be assured that you're walking in the presence of God.
Yes.
God is aware, and it's not our job to be God's police. It's not our job to clean up anybody.
Right.
Our job is to offer the solution to life.
Yes.
And the solution to life is the gospel that gives you an assurance, no matter how crazy it gets, no matter what it is, God has it.
The Lord is my shepherd.
Yes.
He is
Yeah.
mine,
I can only make sure of that for me.
and that's the only
Yeah,
thing we're
exactly.
supposed to.
Yeah.
And that gives us assurance to live life. And sometimes, like we look at it, people think we're crazy, but if you didn't laugh at the world, pretty soon you'd go crazy. I mean, they got some stupid stuff going
Yeah.
on.
Can I go to the Gospel of
You
or
take it.
Book
Go
of John
ahead.
real quick?
You go with it.
John writes in 1 John, I write these things that you may know that you have eternal life. And whenever, it's not about anything that I've done,
Right.
but when I know that Jesus has saved us, that gives you the assurance
That's right.
and the strength and the direction to just take another step
Right.
each day living for Him. And that's not always easy, but when you have that assurance, that makes it a whole lot.
It's nice
easy.
to get up in the morning knowing that Jesus is already up.
Like you said, no matter you're right. No matter what, that's the key there, right? That's no matter what.
Well, one of the statements I love is God already factored in all of my mistakes and stupidity before He went to the cross.
And He loves us anyhow.
He already factored all that in.
Yes, it did.
Yeah.
Well, listen, thank you guys for watching. If you're blessed, hit like, hit share, get it out there. We've got 900 or so people, global audience, global audience watching us. And we're just honored that you take time to listen. More than anything, we hope you'll go back and grab a hold of Psalm 23
Yes.
and give yourself that assurance, maybe share it with somebody else.
Yes.
Any final words, gentlemen?
You wrapped it up pretty well.
All right. God bless you guys.
God bless you.
Chapter 4, 24 next week.
Very
Bye-bye.
good.